Well, the war between Israel and Iran is rapidly escalating. Iran is now striking American diplomatic sites in the region, and the U.S. is warning all U.S. citizens to leave.
President Trump said the fight could last more than a month, and he promised even stronger strikes, saying the big one is coming soon. Our Middle East correspondent Joshua Swanson has the story.
The conflict between Israel and Iran continues to expand, with American forces and diplomatic sites now directly in the crosshairs. Iran hit the U.S. Embassy in Saudi Arabia's capital of Riyadh with a drone strike early Tuesday, causing what Saudi Arabia's defense ministry described as a limited fire and minor damage. It followed an attack the day before on the U.S. Embassy in Kuwait, signaling a widening Iranian response across the region. Iran has attacked targets in a number of other nations, including energy facilities in Saudi Arabia and Qatar. It's also claimed to have closed the Strait of Hormuz, where 20% of the world's oil is shipped. The United States and Israel are intensifying airstrikes inside Iran. President Donald Trump suggested this may only be the beginning of a sustained campaign that could last more than a month. In an interview with the New York Post, Trump refused to rule out sending American troops into Iran if they were necessary. Secretary of State Marco Rubio said the U.S. knew Israel was about to strike and joined in a preemptive strike to prevent higher U.S. casualties from an Iranian retaliation. He also said the attack was necessary. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said Israel had no choice, calling the threat from Iran urgent.
After we hit their nuclear sites and their ballistic missiles program, you'd think they learned a lesson. But they didn't, because they're unreformable. So they started building new sites, new places, underground bunkers that would make their ballistic missile program and their atomic bomb program immune within months.
Trump also said that the largest phase of strikes is still ahead. We haven't even started hitting them hard. The big wave hasn't even happened. The big one is coming soon. The human toll is rising. U.S. military officials confirmed that 6 American service members have been killed in the first 3 days of the war, including troops killed in an Iranian strike on a base housing American forces in Kuwait. At the Pentagon, Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth was asked by a CBN reporter about praying for U.S. forces.
As you've said, there are a large amount of U.S. service members that are in harm's way right now. What is your prayer for them?
I know we think about them with every decision that we make and every recommendation that we make to the President of the United States. Those recommendations are made prayerfully. And when I pray every day for them and for this mission, I pray simply for the biblical wisdom to see what is right and the courage to do it.
The U.S. State Department is urging Americans to immediately depart from more than a dozen Middle Eastern countries, including Israel, as the conflict deepens. With American forces now engaged, evacuation warnings in place, and leaders signaling that more strikes are coming, the Middle East stands on the edge. Joshua Swanson, CBN News, Jerusalem.
Well, CBN News Middle East Bureau Chief Chris Mitchell joins us now from Jerusalem. So, Chris, the president said the biggest blow is about to come. What are you hearing and what are analysts saying? What is that?
Well, the analysts I talked to said it's really hard to believe a bigger wave could come. The unprecedented aerial campaign in the last 3 days or so, 2,500 strikes by U.S. and Israel have hit the presidential palace, defense ministry, the leadership, decapitated the leadership. They're hitting the IRG headquarters and ongoing efforts to hit the ballistic missile launchers. And they could raise the stakes. One thing they could do, the number of strikes even more. Some have said they could hit more of the nuclear sites, or they could hit Iran's oil infrastructure. But that might affect oil prices. And also, if a regime or government comes, they don't want to have that decimated right now. Or some have said it could be rhetoric, just to send a signal, Gordon, to what's left of the Iranian government that the war is far from over. And also just want to let you know that there's a new front in the north that's open. Hezbollah fired some rockets into northern Israel, and the IDF is responding with a campaign, a massive campaign that might signal the end of Hezbollah as we've known it. And also just heard this report just in a few minutes. President Trump is reportedly reaching out to the Kurds along the Iraqi-Irani border And all of these developments, Gordon, signal we're seeing a new Middle East emerging in real time.
Is there any kind of indication that the Kurds are going to supply the ground troops needed to make sure the Revolutionary Guard doesn't stay in power?
That's possible, and they are armed, and they've been in Turkey, they've been in some in Syria, and some in Iraq, and so they could be one of the potential forces that would actually help overthrow the regime and the IRGC.
Well, today is the Israeli holiday of Purim, when the Jews in Persia were delivered from Haman, the plot to annihilate all of them. Do the Jewish people today see a parallel to the biblical story? And what's the mood in Jerusalem?
Well, 100% is the answer I got from a rabbi friend. What's happening right now in the Middle East is not lost on the Jews here in Israel and around the world. The parallels are striking. Some said just word for word. It's the same month. It's the same day. As you said, about 2,500 years ago, there was a genocidal decree that went out from the king to wipe out all the Jews. Yet the man behind that decree, Haman, was wiped out, not the Jews. And so now, 2,500 years later, that genocidal regime that chanted death to Israel for decades is being taken down. Jews read the book of Esther. It's twice on Purim. They call it the Megillah. Some write it in bomb shelters last night. I just heard some are going to read it later today in bomb shelters as well. That's when Haman, the villain, is booed. Mordecai, one of the heroes, is cheered. And the heroine, Queen Esther, is celebrated. And it's the only book in the Bible, Gordon, where the name of God's not mentioned. And yet many people see, you can clearly see his hand. His name is hidden in the text, but his hand wrote every page. And also, finally, there's a tradition here in Purim for some Jewish men to get a little tipsy as celebrated. But this year, they've been instructed not to get drunk. They need to be alert, get themselves and their loved ones to a bomb shelters within a minute's notice. But one person told me there's no need for alcohol to feel how miraculous this is, how historic the moment is. In 2,000 years, many people, he says, are going to be talking about this. And one of them told me that he told their grandchildren, you'll be telling your children years from now what today was like. And they're feeling like they're living in messianic times.
Well, the best part of Purim is the cookies. So hopefully they have boxes of cookies in these bomb shelters and they can celebrate that way. For such a time as this, we've been saying it for a long time, and I've heard it my entire life. And here we are for such a time as this. It's incredible. It's an incredible moment in history. Well, Chris Mitchell, thanks for joining with us.